Welcome, everyone. My name is Mari Giles, Chief Growth Officer at Heart+Mind Strategies. Really excited to be able to be here with you today. We have a number of people joining us as we get started, and Denise and our team will continue to let those in that come and join us. We're especially grateful to have you here today because we know it's summertime and there's a lot going on. And in a pretty, I don't want to be a spoiler alert, but even with dramatic changes in the Olympics, young women's gymnastics, you really still need to check out and see what happened in terms of, if you haven't watched it already, still came up on top in a very exciting thing if you got to see that this morning. Today, we really have a number of things, a number of individuals who have graciously agreed to join us to be able to walk through and talk about an important topic that we want to cover today, and that is the idea of doing well by doing good. Now, we know we have a lot of folks that might be with us today for the first time. We do these sessions with the intent of gathering to kind of hit pause on everyday life and talk about and share experiences and ideas of what we're all dealing with and how we're addressing it as individuals and as organizations. In Heart+Mind Strategies, we really do believe in the power of choice and in championing the human. And we started doing these when the COVID pandemic hit, and we found a lot of value in continuing to gather. And we've got a large number of folks who have some really compelling stories to share. And so I want to jump right into it today. We do encourage you through the chat function to ask questions, add comments. I'll send out a few questions here and there on our poll to be able to get people engaged. And our participants who are sharing their stories, they're also going to answer your questions in the chat, even if they're not talking in that particular time. So please look at this as an authentic, open environment to talk about this idea of really, how do we really make a difference? Now, we always in these share some of our tracking data to set context, because if we're going to make choices as humans in the context of a marketplace, there's a lot going on in terms of understanding why we do what we do and when and how. And in our country today, last month, if you were with us, we were really excited because the first time in a year and a half, we had more people saying they were hopeful and optimistic than cautious and worried and anxious. Well, I got to report to you that a month later, that's not the same. There's a lot going on with the pandemic and the virus, and now we're seeing that that's changed to where hopeful and optimistic have dropped a bit. Now, but when we track the values, the things that really drive us at a higher order level, what's interesting is we were seeing a lot of improvement in values in the recent months, but in this last month, security has dropped considerably in terms of my sense of security. But in the context of what we're talking about today, consistently through this entire pandemic, what has improved at the top has always been this idea of concern for others. And it's exciting to see that happening, even as we have anxiety around some of the things that all might be going on. Clearly, the changes around our sense of hopefulness and optimism and so forth are tied to the pandemic and the changes that are going on right now with the rapid increase of cases. But it's also been something that we've been tracking about as a society, how much we're aligned with each other. And these issues are continuing to drive us a little further apart as a society. And obviously, there's a lot of debate and discussion around vaccines and masks and the CDC ruling and other issues. And so we're operating in that environment where we're sensing this idea of we're still being driven apart. Now, I'm really curious within the group here. I did push out to you a question, and would love to get the question of each of you answering this. Now, I'm violating research protocol because I'm showing you what other people around the country said, so that might influence your answer. But if you see on your screen, there's a chance for you to weigh in on how often do you volunteer in your own time. There is literally no right or wrong answer here, and no one's going to know your answer, so just put out what's real. And then is it with an organization or is it on your own? Now, when we asked this across the country, what we found is that most Americans report that they do some sort of volunteering. There's a third that said they really haven't. There's different data that we've seen across the board in terms of what that number might be. But most are saying that they do that on their own, even though we've got 40% saying it's either with an organization or a combination of both. Now, as we look here with this group, we'll go ahead and share these real quick. It looks like we are seeing, and I'll share these results here across so everyone can see them. As a group here, most every one of us is doing something. The biggest numbers are either weekly or a few times a year. And most of us are doing it through a formal organization. So a little bit different than maybe the overall general public. Now, there's a lot of benefits that happen to us in our life, and that's what we want to talk about today when we give of ourselves in terms of trying to be able to make a difference. And the way we talk about it is this context of what do you do that is beyond the paycheck or beyond the bottom line to try to be able to make a difference. And what we want to do today is what we're hoping for and looking for is for each of you to be able to share with us opportunities. Those that are with us here to share verbally and through the chat function, please feel free to jump in as well to really talk about what are the real benefits of giving back. But we want to start, I do want to share also, and I'll put this in the chat function, thanks to Vicki Levy at AARP, she shared some data that are really powerful that, you know, when you have a sense of purpose in life, it extends your life and statistically at the same level as controlling your diet. Think about what that means. It also lowers our stress rate when we volunteer, keep us active and socially connected. And one of the biggest drivers is asking someone else to get involved. So I want to start by asking my colleague at Heart+Mind Strategies, Brittany Lucas, and I'll turn my screen off here so we get you front and center, Brittany. Can you talk to us about, I know that you do volunteer work at an interdenominational food pantry. When you think about that, why did you start getting involved? How did it start? And what's the personal payoff and any experiences that you could share?
Thanks, Maury. So I got involved with that organization about 8 or 9 years ago. And it really came through my involvement with the young adults organization in my parish. And they had a monthly standing volunteer work with this.
Having a hard time hearing.
I was just going to ask Brittany, I don't know if you can get closer to that microphone there to pick you up there.
Sure, sorry about that. Is that better?
That's a little better. We'll try to be real quiet and you just talk as loud as you can without sounding like you're screaming.
Let me try that. Let me try this. Is this better?
Oh, wow, that's better. Yes.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was on the wrong microphone. Yay, technology. Anyway, hi again. My name is Brittany Lucas and I'm with Heart+Mind, as Maury mentioned. And for the last probably about 8 or 9 years, I've been involved with a local nonprofit, but mostly volunteer-run food pantry that provides emergency food support for people in need. I got involved through my local parish. There's a young adults group and they made a point of volunteering once a month. So I started going with there and really have found it very, very rewarding in the sense that my family culture is very pro food. You know, if we love you, we feed you. And I've never been involved to I've never been to any family event, no matter what time, day or night, where somebody's not trying to feed me something. So the idea of being in a position where I couldn't, you know, feed the people I love, that I couldn't be assured there was food on the table, it's just hard for me to imagine how horrible that would be and how much stress it would be in my life. And I'm also me, I get, you know, when I'm hungry, I'm not the nicest person. So I just can see like how that would snowball in your life. So, you know, what I come in and do on Saturdays with that organization is go and pack groceries. And there's another group of individuals who comes in after us and actually delivers them to the homes of the people in need. And for me, I think there's just, it's great to not only, you know, do a tangible action to help people, but also sometimes it's easy to, especially in a, we're living a lot of our lives digitally now, and it can be easy sometimes, and I don't want to discount it all, just to write a check or send some money. And that's absolutely 100% needed, but there's a kind of a deeper emotional connection when you're with people and you're physically involved and you're seeing the tangible outcomes of what you're working on.
Thank you so much, Brittany. And I would echo that in terms of my own experience of that ability to connect. Were you invited then to join in that with those from your parish?
I was, yes. So I think personal invitations are huge when it comes to volunteering.
I want to shift now to Lauren Perron. Lauren, you and I met when you were working at GSD&M. You've now migrated over to this, I don't know, this thing we all may have heard about once or twice called TikTok. I've got a number of kids who think that TikTok is equal to all truth. And you operate there and play in that world. But what I wanted you to talk about is, I love your story in terms of So Far Sounds in Chicago that you decided to volunteer in, which I think is so unique and something I'd never thought of in terms of a volunteer opportunity. Can you tell us about that story and kind of the impact it's had on you and why you got involved?
Yeah, so I'm a huge music fan. I used to go to concerts at least 2 to 3 times a month. And one of the concerts I would go to a couple times a year would be So Far Sounds. So Far Sounds is this organization that started in London in 2009, where they really just kind of wanted to reimagine the music experience instead of going to like crazy concerts where people were like getting drunk or talking and like the music wasn't the center. They actually made like small intimate concerts where you would go to like someone's apartment or you would go to a rooftop and it was just very intimate, like 50 people listening to an independent artist. So I started getting involved with them, and it was pretty amazing. We were able to give these independent artists who were looking for an audience a platform to really show off their artistry. I did it for 3.5 years in Chicago, which was the third largest market in the world. We would have 30 plus concerts a year. Or a month actually, and I would volunteer twice a month for those, whether it be emceeing or behind the scenes and just helping the artists set up, making them feel comfortable, things of that sort. So yeah.
Great. How would you say it shifted your outlook or helped you develop and become as an individual by doing that type of effort, that work?
Oh, it was great. Not only was I able to like, actually have these personal relationships with these emerging artists and give them a platform to share their artistry, but I also truly hate public speaking. Um,
Great. There you go.
yeah, and so when I started emceeing the concerts and would be in front of the crowds, introducing who the artists were and their type of music, it really did help me personally and professionally with the different types of presentations that I would have to give, and it made me feel more comfortable. So they helped me too.
Thank you so much. And thanks for jumping in on some public speaking here today.
No problem.
Now, we could go on and be a lot of you could talk about your individual stories. What we want to shift now is spend some time talking about, as organizations, how do we make those kinds of decisions and how do we talk about it? What difference does it make? We gathered some data nationally on this, and it was interesting that most Americans, when we gave them these 4 different things of what should be the responsibility of a company, a plurality get that 40% number, the highest one. They want you to not just generate profits and focus on your employees and customers, but they want you to make your community better. And when you toss that on with the 30% who even go a step further, that you should also address broad societal issues, that's 7 out of 10. Now, I think a lot of that has shifted now where companies are having to make some difficult decisions, but really what we found on this one is that there's no significant differences by political views on this, with the exception of that final number, that final option, I mean, on broader societal issues, where you do see that conservatives may, between progressive and conservatives having slightly different views on that. But when we look at this, it feels like you really need to find an area of community engagement that makes sense for your brand, your values, and your purpose, and really ensure that community engagement areas that you identify, they fit with your expectations, the expectations of your brand. But to be motivating and credible, make sure it's understood and embraced by employees and listen to their voice, because often they're in tune with the needs of the community. And then engage partner organizations to be able to get there. Now, as we have our guests speak on the corporate side, one of the things that is a big question is, do you talk about this? It's kind of weird to even I appreciate Brittany and Lauren being willing to do this, but I recognize the perception that might be of focusing on me. Oh, look at me, I'm doing something good. But most Americans, in fact, when you look at that, 39% say it's very important and 46% somewhat important. They want to know about this, but who and how really matters in terms of what we found in our data is that it's a human story that's better told through the community and through your employees. So to get to this now, I want to first introduce a very good friend of mine. Sarah, you've been at this at J&J in something that's kind of rare for people today. You've been at J&J, I believe, for 32 years. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. A long time.
This little company, J&J, that working on a few different things around the world, and then might even be involved in terms of the pandemic and trying to help us there. Can you tell me, what has your journey been like to help steer a global player like J&J to try to take on the idea of giving back and making a difference in the lives and communities where you operate, which is all over the world? And you've been in a unique position to be in the middle of that, and then for many years steering that. Can you share some of those cool experiences and the way you've processed that?
Sure. First of all, it's so privileged to be here. There's so many wonderful people. And I guess I'm a privileged person. I worked at a great company for a really long time and got to do some amazing things. And I think as I reflected on what made it an amazing experience, a lot is what Maury commented on, right? That company's got to be authentic to who it is, and it's got to do things that are authentic, that it reflects what it's all about. And Johnson & Johnson for 135 years has been guided by its credo and its responsibilities to its community. So it's authentic to who we are. But while it's authentic, you still have to be doing things as a company that are true to what people know you for, right? So what is your brand? How do you tie your doing good to the world around you and to what you stand for? And I think that's what really makes it not work just be philanthropy, but really be part of business. And there's a couple things we've done at J&J that I'm really proud of. One is we've worked, as you may know, with nurses for many years. It's about 20 years now in the US, at a point where there was actually a nursing shortage. And very pleased to say that nursing shortage has self-corrected. We think we played a bit of a role there. But today, as you come out of the pandemic, you realize just the integral nature that work nurses play in the healthcare field. And we've taken on a real role of advocacy for the innovation that nurses can bring to healthcare. So you can see the match, right? We're a healthcare company. We're supporting one of our most important customers, but we're bettering society. And that's pretty exciting. The other piece of work that I really love that we've done is our work with Global Citizen. And some of you from the music industry may know Global Citizen, but that is a movement around the world that is really geared to help eliminate strong poverty. And global health, because of the pandemic and because health is so key to eliminating poverty, was always a focus. And we became their global health partner. Again, we had an opportunity to be true to who we are and an opportunity to impact society. And working together, we were able to talk about HIV vaccines, talk about HIV prevention, talk about other issues related to the pandemic. So that's been a really wonderful experience for me personally. I've been on their board, so I've seen this organization grow and get stronger. So sometimes it's not only what your company does, but that's a way you can individually go in there. And I will echo one more thing that Maury said, and then I'll leave the floor to others. But that's the importance of your own employees. That if I've learned one thing in today's war for talent, who you are, what you stand for, what you participate in, that motivates your people. And I would dare to say that that's going to be key today and into the future for the attraction and attention of the best talent.
Now, Sarah, for you, as you think through each of these experiences that you've had, where it's a unique position because the platform that you have as an organization is large because of the efforts that were made early on and have continued to be made. How have you dealt with and seen the organization deal with how you talk about these things in a way that's authentic to who you are and genuinely trying to make a difference without it seeming like self-serving?
Yeah, so Maury knows this well because he was part of this journey, right? But we were always a company that was humble and our philanthropy was off to the side. And in the last 4 to 5 years, and some of the examples I just gave you, that's the key. Philanthropy wasn't to the side. Philanthropy was part of the brand and how you went to market and the things that you focused your attention on. And that gave you a couple of opportunities. One, it was authentic. And two, I've always believed in the rainmaker strategy, that if a large company participates in something, it attracts others and it makes everybody stronger and all boats rise. And that's what it's about, all boats rising. But talking about it, always a challenge. And that's why authenticity related to your business and your brand is the most natural way.
Okay. One last question, Sarah. You're about to make a change of your own platform. It was recently publicly announced that you're going to move on from the role you've had for quite some time. What are you going to do now, and why do you want to do that? I love the story. I love the essence behind it. Can you share a little bit with the group here? Because we're all trying to figure out how we can make a difference. Why are you doing what you're doing now to step away?
So again, very fortunate for many years, but now's the opportunity where I feel I can take those lessons and help other companies and other organizations learn from them and rise their boats. I so believe that I want to make a difference in the world, and I can do it through one company, or I can do it by working with a lot of different companies and a lot of different organizations, figuring out what they all stand for and putting them all together. So I'm looking forward to my personal chapter where purpose and making a difference is what gets me up every day. It has for many years as a corporate person. Now I want to do it more personally.
Thanks. As we go through these stories, put in questions that you have, and we're going to have some time to circle back and talk about this. And also we're going to do some writing, some blog post writing afterwards, some of these stories in more detail. But I want to shift to Ashley Middleton at GMMB. If you're not familiar with GMMB, they're in DC and in Seattle, and they're very powerful, purpose-based, cause-driven agency. And Ashley, you have a story that really touched my heart when I first heard about it. And can you tell us the story about Mark and how you all decided to be able to create a position that fulfilled a need authentic to your company, but also opened a door for a young man with Down syndrome to be able to feel a part of something, and now many years later still going?
Of course. So I think, like a lot of companies, we're always looking to improve the diversity of our staff. And we realized, it was around 2006, we realized that we were missing that category of adults with disabilities. And so we made a concerted effort. We reached out to some local communities and we asked, how do we go about doing this? And we found out that you can do what's called a job carve, where basically you look at needs around your company and you form a job out of that. So rather than trying to fill a role that already exists, you do this job carve, and then suddenly you manage to create something that's actually fills a business need, but also plays to the strengths of the person that you're trying to hire. So Mark has been with GMMB for the last, I think, 15, 16 years. And I think the thing that we get out of it the most is such a deeper understanding of what it means to live with Down syndrome or any development disability, because in many ways he's so much more like us than I would have otherwise thought. And in my experience, I had never interacted with someone with Down syndrome before working with Mark. I've now since learned that there are a number of my colleagues who have family members who have Down syndrome, or friends or neighbors from growing up. And so not only do those of us who haven't had that interaction suddenly have an opportunity, but then you learn a lot more about your colleagues, and you just have a different perspective on the world and what it means to be kind of a good communicator and a kind of a good community member.
I believe you're able to talk with Mark and to actually capture a short video. And then as you do that, after you do that, tell us a little bit about how you actually made that work and what he's doing now. Because I know it's been a challenge during COVID, of course. But if you're able to get your screen to share, let's meet Mark briefly.
Yeah. How long have you worked at GMMB?
16 years.
16 years, that's right. And what do you do at work?
Newspaper, mail.
Uh-huh. And what else?
One print.
Uh-huh. What about packages or copiers?
Yeah. Printers, fax, and copiers.
Yep, you fill them up with paper. What are you particularly good at work? What do you like the most? What's your favorite thing to do about coming to the office?
Got in the kitchen.
Stock in the kitchen, so fun. Yeah, that's always good. Do you have any movie advice or things that we should be doing?
My favorite movie is Coco.
Yeah, that's a very good movie. And you can sing some of the songs, right?
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
I wish he had taken the bait and actually started singing, which he did on a previous Zoom that we had, which was wonderful. And as soon as we hung up, we were starting to talk about the Olympics, and he mentioned that he had just gotten a gold in the Special Olympics for bocce. So,
Oh, really?
yes.
Now, what is it? What else has it triggered your organization to be able to do or do differently by having this experience for 15 years, 16 years?
So I think it's certainly, I mean, we're an organization that we do a lot of outreach, either to help marginalized, suffering, or underserved communities, or to reach those same communities. And so I think it gives all of us a bit more of a firsthand experience with how to talk to families who have adults with disabilities who are trying to navigate the workforce, and to think about, the messaging that you use and the way that you reach out. But then it's also been nice because none of this would be possible if we didn't have that organization that helped us figure out how to do a job carve, and also provides job coaching services for Mark. The Treatment and Learning Centers, they're in Rockville, and this is their entire life's work. They're a nonprofit that focuses on children and adults with disabilities, and I've become a member of their business advisory board, and learning more about what they've been doing and how they've navigated the pandemic and shifting everything to virtual. And as you can imagine, I mean, it's hard for all of us to be remote. And then imagine if, you have a disability that makes you particularly socially anxious, or particularly worried about what's happening in the world, or your job is now gone because it was, one of the first things that was cut when people were cutting budgets. So they have done a ton to make sure that people still feel connected, and that they are opening doors for people and making sure that they have employment opportunity, and really advocating for that group.
So similar to Sarah on a very specific level, it's authentic to who you are, fulfilling a real need. Then as a result, it sounds like you've not just had personal connections that have shifted your workforce to have a relationship with him, but it's gotten you connected with other organizations that you and others are on their board and helping to make a difference as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you on that. And we'll come back with some more questions. I do want to ask you, everyone, another quick question. I'm going to shift over to Dina Percassi. I want to set up, as Dina goes into this, there's a question that I've put out there for you. There's actually two of them, and it's about your organizations. No, there's no judgment here. I just want to know from this group, which of these statements best describes the way you feel the organization that you're a part of operates in terms of volunteering? And then if you have efforts to give back as an organization, where are you at in terms of your ability to know what to do, and in terms of sharing it externally? Now, Dina, I want to toss it over to you. You have an interesting journey and path, because you came kind of from our background in the world of research and consulting, and then a client loved what you were saying so much that they said, no, you need to come work for us, help us talk about that. And so you've now been working for Wegmans. Some people may not be familiar with Wegmans. So I know you're the director of media and public relations strategy over at Wegmans. Maybe you can introduce a little bit about that. I think you did have a busy morning announcing your first store in Manhattan, right?
Yep, it's been crazy.
We appreciate you stepping away from all the media inquiries. But, different communities may have different needs. For you, how does Wegmans take this into account in your community engagement that's beyond the bottom line and selling everything you sell at your stores, but truly trying to make a difference in communities?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me here. But I think it all goes back to there's 5, what we call our who we are values. One of those values being make a difference in every community we serve. So we have 106 stores. Those 106 stores are in very different communities. those stores are empowered to think about their giving strategy in their own community. So it's not set by Rochester corporate. We're in 7 states. And again, vastly different from Scranton, Pennsylvania to Rochester, New York, to Brooklyn, New York, to North Carolina, to Raleigh, North Carolina. So it's, it's really getting out there and empowering our stores to know the needs of the community. I think, Sarah, you said it well, is, you got to go with your values, and you got to think of those giving priorities. And because we're a food company, our giving priorities are feeding the hungry first and foremost, supporting local schools and education, because we believe that the cycle of poverty is fixed if you start with education, supporting youth and families throughout the journey, and then enriching every neighborhood we serve. So when we're looking to give and when we're seeing requests, that's what we're looking for. And really, it's that we ask that each of the stores, from an operations standpoint, it is put on them that they have this community budget, if you will, and they can always kind of come back and ask for more. They're said to really think about where the needs are in their community. And it's not only their community, it's the communities where the employees of that store live. So sometimes we put a store in one location, the employees might come from farther out. Well, what does that community need? What do our employees need, and where we can help? It's something where we go back to those values every day. I mean, I saw it through COVID. I see it through the community giving. It's something that's ingrained in us. And again, it is one of our 5 values, is really to make a difference.
What are the specific things that you do that are either giving to community needs or facilitating opportunities for your staff to be involved and to volunteer? Because you're central to a community as a grocery store in that context, right? But what are those specific things that you've done that you feel have been particularly impactful and kind of touched you personally as well?
Yeah, so as you look at like the things that we do, they're not, some of the things that we do, we're looking at, say, helping youth and families come together, helping food insecurity. So a good example of things in getting out and being healthy and living healthier, better lives through food. A good example would be that we have hiking trails that we sponsor in all of the communities we serve. It's called the Hit the Trails program. We have different camps, kid camps. We have different playgrounds, different play spaces. We have a play space at the Smithsonian, and it's all about kind of getting active and learning about healthy eating, activity and things like that. So to kind of see us as a grocery store touching the youth and touching on the youth of today and all of that, it's important for us. We see that it's very important throughout the pandemic, as far as the serving people in need. I could say that last year, the amount of food that we donated and we gave, it totaled more than 38 million meals. And when you think about the fact that we're a 7-state, 106 store grocery store, that's a pretty big number. We're small, but we're mighty. But I think, Maury, and something that, going back to how you introduced me, something that got me hired here was, I said, you need to tell your story, because no one's telling it, or else someone's going to tell it for you. And Sarah, to your point, we're a humble company. We're family owned. The family is very humble. And it's something where, it's hard for them they feel like it's bragging. But we need to find ways to tell the story. So ways that we've been really kind of taking what we've done and telling the story are either through our third-party partners, where they kind of tell the story for us, or we'll kind of group things together. So you'll see we have a newsroom, And we'll talk about the lives that we've impacted as opposed to the financial support that we've given. So again, like we've impacted X lives through our scholarship program. We have, millions of kids this year got to play in our play spaces. So again, it's about talking about that impact and also giving people ideas that don't involve grocery shopping. So one of the articles up in our newsroom is, summer fun for everyone. And it lists all of the things that we sponsor and we're part of, where people can go out in their community and get active and bring their kids and really enjoy family time, because that's really what it's all about.
So it really sounds like a lot of what you're saying has to do with giving back isn't just money and time from our staff, but it's thinking about the fact that you are a player in a community.
Yes.
And what can you do to help facilitate things that people need in their lives? That's not about you making money, but it's a stakeholder view of, and maybe ties into the movement towards stakeholder capitalism, of recognizing that you got to think about where you live and how you make life better. Is that, and Sarah, I'd love you to weigh in on this as well, but Dina and Sarah, I mean, is that kind of what you're saying, that you got to think of yourself as a player in a society, not just a business?
Yep, and that's absolutely right. I mean, you mentioned the announcement of Manhattan today. We're already talking to community leaders down there on the needs of that community. We're not opening a store until late 2023. So it's something that's planned out that we think about ahead of time.
Yeah.
Sarah, what's your take on that?
So I really do think that future businesses are going to be the key to society being successful. I really do believe in a circle of life approach, meaning that if business does well, it can give to communities. If communities do well, society does well, businesses do better, and hence the circle of life starts again. So I think it can be philosophical, but I also think there's basic financial reasons, not just for the company, but for society, to adopt this purpose-driven mission that I think will, again, propel business, propel talent coming in, and propel society.
Kevin Boyle asked a really important question here. The three of you come from organizations that just spoke with us that kind of have at your DNA either a connection to the community or cause-based driven or health at the core, right? Where it seems like it's a natural and organic connection to really trying to make a difference in what matters. How would you advise an organization, and you're going to be in this position, Sarah, with what you're going to be doing, but if an organization wants to build that sense of community and authentically connect it to their brand, if it's not intrinsic in the product or service they offer, or it wasn't part of the DNA when they started, how do they get there? How do they make it real and make it seem like, oh yeah, it's easy for you to say as Johnson & Johnson are doing that, but for me, how do I do that?
So I think if you look at so many successful brands today, they do stand for so much more. Look at Patagonia. Look at Life is Good. I was just reading about some great work that they're doing. Every brand can have a purpose. You don't just have to work in health or food, but every brand can have a purpose that's bigger than itself. It just requires rewiring that profit-driven mentality to a mentality of how do I make a difference in the world. And the business cases, as I keep saying, are becoming clearer and clearer. Companies will be rewarded for it by the purchase of their products. And frankly, that's how they're going to get their best talent.
I'd like to encourage our audience here. Do you put in the chat, do you have examples of someone other than a J&J or a Patagonia or what have you that does something that really is inspiring? But Ashley, Dina, do you have any guidance on that before we move to our next section?
It's funny because Sarah, you just mentioned something that brought me back to a conversation that I had with Colleen Wegman, who said, best in the world's great, but best for the world is better. And that's how we live.
Love that.
That's a wonderful quote.
It's a wonderful quote.
I would just echo what Sarah said too, that it's, even if it's not part of your company's already existing brand, it will improve the talent that you draw to your company, which will help your company. And it will also any deeper understanding you can get of your audience, a lot of which is easier to get when you get to know them and get to know what they care about and what they love and what they do outside of shopping for your product.
And any company can hire a special needs person who in an authentic way.
That's correct. In fact, I know in Rockville, Wegmans, when they came, y'all hired a number of people who were consumers at the treatment and learning centers, and everyone was, first of all, thrilled that Wegmans had arrived, and also that was just a natural thing that, of course, you would go into the community, and there are a lot of adults with disabilities in Montgomery County because it has really good services.
Great. Well, thank you on that, and we'll circle back at the end as we have time to address any other questions. We've got a few people that have joined us today that work in organizations that are helping to facilitate this type of effort. Now, Lane Daybell and Heath Bradley with Just Serve, years ago, thank you for joining us today, and I'd love to see if you could kind of tell, years ago, what started in a faith-based community context to really address disaster relief and coordinate volunteerism. You all saw a need and jumped on it. And since then, it's expanded to be where I believe you're around the globe, helping to facilitate individuals connect with needs and even organizations to connect. Lane, do you want to tell us a little bit about that, you and Heath, in terms of how that's happened and any cool stories along the way that you've been learning to help facilitate people to find ways to give back?
Yeah, you bet. We appreciate being with this group because this is a wonderful group to be a part of. And I'm smiling through the whole thing because you're sharing what we love to see happen. And so our goal is to simplify that process of, having been involved in it for years in reaching out and serving. We wanted to simplify for people to be able to connect to organizations that needed the service. And so really that's what we've developed, and that's what we provide at Just Serve, is that connection. Again, in just a way so people can go on, they can log in, they can search locally in their area and find projects that are one-person projects or group projects, and they can serve how and where they would prefer. And so really that's what we're trying to do. It's a free service. As you mentioned, we're sponsored by our church, but it is a free service to the community, and that we want to provide to the community for organizations and for those who volunteer. There's no cost.
Lane, how does an organization engage with that tool versus, let's say, me as Maury Giles living in Harriman? A different way of engaging and interacting?
Yeah, so we do have, actually, they're all volunteers across the US and Canada, and we're expanding globally, as you mentioned, but we're fully functional in the US and Canada. And so we have local specialists that connect with different organizations. They'll help train them, help support them in getting their projects and needs posted. And then again, as individuals go on, they can see those projects, they can see what they need and the hours, and then they can volunteer and what meets for them.
Any cool experiences or stories that you've seen in this process of offering a portal for people to connect with, in terms of lives changed and opportunities that have been jumped on that might have been missed if this hadn't been a tool to help facilitate?
Yeah, and I think that's difficult to narrow it down. I had a video, just a quick video that I could share of an organization that used Just Serve in their business to give back to the community. All right.
Yeah, you bet.
Let me.
And make sure to click the share my computer sound button so we can hear it as well.
Yeah, let me. I think that should be up now. Oh wait, nope. No. You seeing that?
Yep.
All right, hey guys, Jason with Fat Thunder Garage, and right behind us we've got a pretty fun little project we're doing. I say fun, they might be like, why are we doing this? We should be building cool hot rods, but at the moment we're actually building cool sandwiches and lunch bags for some people at homeless shelters. There's an organization called The New Leaf, and they need sandwiches and lunches made for their organization. So first thing we did was we went on an app that we downloaded on our phone that's called Just Serve. And this Just Serve app actually works with all faiths and all organizations, schools, and people that actually have needs in your community. So if it's something you're looking for, a project where you want to actually serve in your community, you can go download the Just Serve app, click on search your nearby surrounding area, and you can find a list of projects where you can actually select one. We selected one that would work with a group where we can actually make and package items in an assembly line real quickly, hopefully less than an hour, but it's something easily we can do, and trying to do something at least once a quarter, the very best we can. But two things I'm hoping. One, we get to help people that are in need, and especially because of this last year pandemic, a lot of people are in need. And the second thing is build some company morale, a little bit of bonding, but most importantly, I really want us to become, occasionally, if we can, other focused and a little less self-focused. It's a great opportunity for.
So anyways, there's a little more to that, but they got involved and they found a way that their company, their organization could give back, and they do something quarterly. We actually came across this. We didn't ask them to do it, but it's something that they wanted to share after they had the experience in their organization. So they found a way that worked for them, a way that they could give back. And again, they were able to find the project through Just Serve. And that's our hope, is just to make that easier for people.
Thank you. Thank you for being here to share that, because one of the things is to facilitate opportunities to help people get engaged. You know, another way to do this is to take on direct issues. And Mark Burgell, who's co-founder of the Shared Humanity Project, has joined us today. And Mark, you've taken on issues, I mean, for a long time, and tried to be a catalyst for getting people involved and trying to make a difference. From your perspective, one of the things I think from talking with you that I think is really powerful is you've been trying to work to take really tough issues and break it down to the practical things that people can actually do and organizations do to truly make a difference, to try to fulfill that need. Can you share a little bit about the Shared Humanity Project and how that really has changed your outlook of helping organizations and individuals give back?
Sure. Yeah, and like everyone said, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be part of this. But I started a grassroots nonprofit in the DC area about 20 years ago called A Wider Circle. And I did that just because I saw so many people living in poverty through my volunteer work, living without beds, without food, without jobs. And so as a service provider, we did a lot of great work, and the organization continues to do great work in the DC area. But across those 20 years, I didn't see much progress in the country as a whole. I didn't see a lot of people getting out of poverty. I saw a lot of people getting served, and I saw a lot of people helping, but I didn't see a lot of focus on outcomes and on really an intolerance of not getting outcomes. So every night that we, don't end poverty, the mothers lose kids, and kids graduate from school or leave school underprepared for what's next. And so I felt very frustrated by working hard, but not getting outcomes. And so the Shared Humanity Project is an effort to focus on outcomes. And we created this national plan to end poverty. It's in a beta version, so it's not released yet, but I'd love to show a few pages of that, if I could, Maury, and just describe what our first initiative is. I'll share my screen here and see if everybody can see that. So it should say National Plan to End Poverty. And if you scroll down, the main part of this is an action guide. So you could choose individual and safety. Here we have 10 different sectors. Let's say instead of individual, you wanted to look what your business could do. And instead of safety, you could choose any one of these areas of poverty. Let's say you chose basic needs, and then you just click take action. And we give you 5 different things your company could do, depending on what your interest is. Select any one of those, give it a shot. And since it's in beta version, we're looking for feedback. But let's say basic needs isn't your issue, but housing is really what your company's interested in. Then we would have, right now, there's 3 different options for housing. And if you're a faith community, you could choose faith community. And if childcare was your issue or education, you would do that. And we would have different options for your organization. That's all part of this way of saying, look, there's something for everybody to do. Poverty is not the responsibility of government or even of nonprofits, although we have categories for nonprofits and for government. But poverty is the responsibility of all of us. And only when all of us engage and look at the totality of poverty will we start to make outcomes. So that's the goal of this. And other pieces of this plan, we've kind of redefined poverty, if you will. And so this is a heat map of it. Always plays tricks on me. But then we've looked at where poverty is in the country. And so this is the number of persons living below poverty by county across the entire country. Most of the fields are too small, but you can see Los Angeles County has the most, Cook County is second, Harris County, Texas third, and so on and so forth. And you could explore the site and get more. And we redefine poverty more so that we don't look at the poverty line as, let's say, a family of four, 26,200. That's not a sane approach to poverty. Poverty, if you live in Baltimore City, for example, you need at least 61,000. So I'll stop going through the details. It looks like I'm shilling for the plan, which I'm not. What I'm really trying to do is say, look, we need to relook at poverty, look at it differently, and then we need to act. All of us, no matter what we associate with, whatever our sector, we need to act. And of course, the last thing I'll say is that we need to listen to people in poverty, right? So we have a lived experience section that we're building out. And right now, Leo and Jimmy are the first two people to submit videos, and they talk about in their 3-4 minute videos what their experience was in poverty. So I'll stop sharing, but just to say that we ought to be intolerant, right, of poverty in our midst. We know how to solve this. We literally know how to solve it. It's just a matter of will. And so we try to present pathways. The Shared Humanity Project is an effort to show people, look, here's what you can do. Join the community of actors and let's solve this.
What I love, Mark, and Elaine and Heath, and what you guys shared is, I mean, Mark, you're making it a step further to make it practical to the real things that, like, if you're trying to make a difference and you pick what type of organization, or if you're going to just serve, and I am a person, I live here and I want to do something, you're taking it a step further, Mark, to get down to the practical outcomes that you know are going to be able to make a difference. And what I'm curious, Dina or Sarah, on this, as an organization looking at something that Mark's has, this strikes me as pretty powerful because it's outcome based, there's real data, and you're making real decisions. If you really want to take an issue on, you can't just talk about it, you got to be smart about it. And this strikes me as something that shortcuts that for you on this issue. Any reaction, Sarah or Dina, on that?
I think it's spot on. When we look at our community giving, and when we look at our community, we have a scorecard that we look at. We're a very operational company. We're Wegmans, right? So we're operations to the core, but we take and we look at things from a community, from a operational perspective, and really score ourselves to where do we want to make a difference, and are we? And sometimes, I mean, again, in the Rochester community, we're always pushing for results, especially. I mean, we have 46 stores in the upstate New York area. So we have more of an influence there, but I think it's always that sort of the community ROI, like what is it doing, and make sure that it's actionable.
What about a larger company like Johnson & Johnson with the resource that Mark's talking about here, Sarah? Did you have your own versions of this? Or how does this strike you as being helpful to making decisions on what to do?
So I always felt like measuring impact was the biggest challenge. So as I'm looking at what Mark's bringing forward, I'm beginning to recognize that that's a tool to do that. The other piece that I think Mark has been able to do by identifying the highest areas of poverty and insights into them is usually there's not one root cause. There's multiple root causes, but they're different by communities. And I think with the data, you're giving us an insight to understand a community and understand how to make the real systemic changes. Not just give money, right? It's back to what I said, you just can't give $1. You've got to know, how can I systemically make a difference?
Yeah. Lane, have you all looked at, on the Just Serve side, bringing more than just a connection in terms of some evaluative impact when you're making a decision? Is that something you all have looked at?
We do gather that, but we, as far as who we serve and where we serve, we're open to anyone. So we just kind of let people who need that and who want to serve gather together. But as far as the impact. We're starting to measure that, starting to see more of that, but the Just Serve is fairly new. And so we're evolving with that now.
Thank you. Now I want to turn to Danielle, and Danielle, I apologize. We're new friends, but so if I say your name wrong, is it Kayembe? Am I saying that right? Last name?
You did a great job. That's perfect.
Okay, good. As my friends know, I'm a stickler on my own name, even though those closest to me still have difficulty pronouncing it right. So just wanted to make sure I got that out. Now, Danielle, another way to take on and be a catalyst for this, to make a difference, is to take on issues and to be vocal, you know, and you're a part of an organization that started with a unique intent called the Female Quotient, to try to truly raise issues and then bring people together to talk about them so that they'll make a difference. And now you spend your time doing that and gathering panels and organizations to talk about this. Can you share with us from your perspective, how do you see what you do now with the Female Quotient helping to try to be a catalyst for people to make a difference and give back?
Absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me. We are new friends, and this is my first time attending one of these gatherings, and it's been really wonderful to see the conversation and just to see the combination of people at the table. And there have been a lot of really wonderful ideas shared. And, this is so similar to kind of our purpose at the Female Quotient, right? It's about bringing a lot of different voices together and allowing people to learn. So I've been learning from all of you, and it's been great to see how everyone is creating change and pursuing purpose in their own way. I am at the Female Quotient, which is, I really think of it as a mission-driven company. So the Female Quotient started out of a recognition that at the largest industry conferences, whether it's business or technology or marketing, women are usually anywhere from 5 to 10% of the attendees. There are usually very few women speaking. And there's very little content that's actually designed for women. And the women who attend don't get FaceTime with each other. So they don't get to meet their counterparts. And they kind of miss out on being able to network with people who share their common goals and backgrounds. So the Female Quotient really started out of that recognition of that need. And every year, kind of our flagship is that we host lounges, what we call equality lounges for women at the 9 major global conferences every year. So that would include CES, that would include Davos and Cannes Lion. So our team flies around the world to pull those events together. And then we do events throughout the year that are smaller or more curated for our customers and clients, who we have, industry leading clients from and everything from kind of the P&Gs of the world to banking and finance. But all of them have a commitment to equality and a commitment to women. And we really believe that, it's a new time and a new generation, right? And the conversation around women, around how we achieve equality, whether it's in the workplace or whether it's in the world, is something that we all can be a part of. And so just recently, I helped to lead during Cannes Lion some panels on impact and purpose. And it's incredible to see what companies are doing in that space. So you have, companies like the North Face that started an Explore Fund, which is trying to create more accessibility to the outdoors for people of color. So similar to, I think, some of the points that Sarah brought up around authenticity and how any company, right, can bring things to life. And there are also companies like 15% Pledge, which is a really community-driven initiative. And they are all about getting companies to pledge that 15% of their shelf space will go to businesses founded by African American and BIPOC founders. And just in 1 year, they've been able to redirect close to $10 billion to small and medium companies that are founded by people of color, right? So there are incredible stories like that that you see across the spectrum. And we really see that there's, we try to be the convener and the amplifier that brings these stories together and gives them a stage so that, our community of women, we reach women in over 100 countries around the world. And we feel like, we have the ear of the executive suites of so many companies. And so it's a great way for us, we feel, to be able to elevate messages of people doing positive work.
I love that. And it's really felt like that was a powerful way to have you join us here at the end to be able to share that, because it starts with dialogue, right? It starts with talking about things. And the thing that you do, and Shelley, who, if you ever met Shelley, you've met Shelley, is she gets people to talk about real things. And hopefully today, what we've done is talk about some real things that each of us can do or do a little differently. Before we wrap up, I know this is going to be shared out video. Otherwise, I know some people may need to bounce, but I would like to put our panelists on the spot through the chat function. And I'm going to show one last thing and we'll close. Here's what I want to ask our panelists to do. If you could each type in the chat function two things. If there was one advice that you would give to somebody about what they or their organization could be doing right now, what's that one single bit of advice? Something quick and actionable that might be top of your mind. The second is, what resource would you direct them to? And I'm fine, Lane and Mark, if you say Just Serve or if you say Charity Mandate. But what resource would you give them to try to make a difference? And if you could put those in the chat function, and we'll put those out on our blog post as well. And as we close, I want to take you back to this. We did see in the results of the poll earlier that a lot of you have organizations that are doing things and others that want to do things. And you're split on what to do in terms of how you talk about that. And so hopefully you've received some advice on that today. But when we asked people nationally on the benefits of community engagement such as this, we asked them in terms of how important these things are. And we're only showing here that top box there of the most important things that they responded to us, because all these were in the 80s and 90s in terms of overall importance. But the thing I want to emphasize here is that it's about being able to truly connect on the community level is a win-win proposition. If you look at the most important benefits that people see, it's improvement to a quality of life and building stronger communities. But then it taps into your company values. You heard that over and over again today from our guests, of stand for something and then live that, not just in your product and service, but who you are and the way you behave as an individual as well as an organization. In the end, you connect with your customers and you deepen with your employees to want to live and work with you. And if you really speak to the win-win, then it's going to make a difference. Really speaking to the idea of how community engagement fosters a better quality of life and stronger communities, and really understanding that people benefits are a mutual thing for both your customers and your employees, and a company that stays true to its values lasts far longer than the product or service that you sell or people leverage in your life. So we appreciate everybody coming here together. We challenge us all. Let's go beyond the paycheck and the bottom line. Whether it's you individually or you as an organization, do one simple thing for a real thing, but make it real, not for someone to see you, but because you really believe in what you're doing. And we extend that invitation at the end of our session today. Choose to make a difference in humanity, where you live, where you work, where you play, or where you serve. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And thank you for all of our panelists and giving us this advice. And we look forward to continuing the dialogue and continue to learn from each other. So thanks so much, and I hope everybody has a great day.